Hello Year 9 and welcome to this lesson of your home learning. Today's lesson we're going to look at to what extent is fair trade better than aid in reducing the gap. So first of all we need to define aid as our first learning objective. So what is aid? We're then going to explore the different types of aid that is used to reduce the gap. So what types of strategies are used to reduce the gap? And then finally we're going to understand how fair trade helps reduce the gap. So we're going to look at fair trade and look how that reduces the gap in development. Again, you've got your equipment in the bottom left hand corner, so just have a quick read through that so you know what you need for this lesson. You've also got your know your level, and again that links to your MG grade, and you should be looking to do the task that links to your MG. So just have a quick read through them before you start the lesson. So our first learning objective of this lesson is to define aid. So what is aid? So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video which you can find on class charts. And while watching the video, for the developing task, I want you to come up with a definition for aid. So I think aid is this. For secured, you're then going to add what you think aid might involve and what are the examples you can see in the video and where in the world is receiving the most aid and why do you think that is the case. For mastered then, what is the problem with aid and is it a long-term solution to the global development gap? So what you need to do then is you need to pause this video, go over to class charts, open up the video about what aid is, and you're going to find a definition, think of some examples for secured, and then for mastered, what is the problem and is it the long-term solution? Okay, so just pause the video now and go over to class charts. So that brings us on to our second learning objective then, and we're going to look at the different types of aid. So there are 6 types of aid that you need to know about. There are short-term, long-term, bilateral, multilateral, tied and voluntary. Now what I want you to do is you're going to use a word wall activity, and for the developing task I want you to go over to word wall and match up the different types of aid to the definitions. Once you've done that, you can move on to the secure task, which is can you try and add examples for each method. So for each one of those methods, can you think of examples of each one? And then for master, do you think these methods are good or bad? So for each one, do you think it's a good method of aid or a bad method of aid, and can you explain why you think that? So I think short-term aid is good because, or I think short-term aid is bad because. Okay, you do that for each one. So again, you just need to pause the video, go over to word wall, match up the definition to the type of aid, then you can come back and complete the secured and mastered task once you've completed your word wall. So that brings us to our final learning objective, and we're going to look at the example of fair trade. Now, I'm just going to flash up the green box here, and that gives you the definition or tells you what fair trade is. So can you just pause the video now and just read that definition for fair trade? Okay, so now that you've read the definition of fair trade, what I would like you to do is can you create the following table? So we're going to look at, is fair trade worth it? And you need to create this table. It needs to have yes, fair trade closes the gap, or no, fair trade does not close the gap. So just pause the video again while you create this table. So now that you've created this table, we're going to fill this table with information from the following newspaper articles. So you will be given a newspaper article which you can find on class charts. It's a Word document that you need to open. You need to look for the positives and negatives of fair trade. So if it's a positive, you're going to put it in the yes, fair trade is closing the gap. If it's a negative, you're going to put it in no, fair trade does not close the gap. So for developing, can you add 2 pieces of evidence which support the idea that it closes the gap and it does not close the gap? For secured, once you've done the developing task, pick one of these yes and no arguments and use it to explain how it does or does not close the gap. So you need to kind of say, this example does close the gap because, or this example does not close the gap because. And then finally your master task is, in 2020, is fair trade still a valid option? So in current times, is fair trade still a valid option to close the gap in development, and you need to justify your opinions. That's where I'd expect you to use a pedal paragraph. So I think fair trade is a valid option because this means that this links to, or I think fair trade is not a valid option because this means that this links to. Okay, so just pause the video now, go over to ClassCharts, open up your newspaper article, read through it, look for the positives and negatives and add them to the correct part of the table. Then you can have a go at the secured and master tasks which are on this video. So just pause the video now. So that brings us to the end of this lesson, and just want to go through what I'd like you to upload to ClassCharts. So the first thing I'd like you to upload is your definition of aid and your word wall score, and that links to exploring the different types of aid and how they're used to reduce the gap. And then I would like you to upload your table for and against fair trade. And again, that links to our final learning objective, which was understanding how fair trade helps reduce the gap. So once you've uploaded that work, you've completed the lesson. Well done again for participating. And again, the whole geography team's looking forward to seeing your work. So keep up the hard work, guys, and I'll speak to you soon.